I think that obviously, perhaps the more difficult ones are going to be SADC and the AU, and perhaps your neighbors, although Hichilema has really set a benchmark in Zambia.
Yes.
So perhaps that ball is beginning to roll, because I think that the problem with organizations like United Nations and things, they're very happy to do something, if I wouldn't say negative, but it is negative, in that they will impose sanctions. They're not awfully good at taking active action. And there may well have to be a degree of active action in order to get this over the line, unless it's going to run past your death date and mine.
Yes. I think we fully understand that that's the challenge before us. The way we've chosen to deal with that particular challenge is that we have looked at everything that's been happening up until now, and there are indications that the international arena has become rather tired and fed up with the Zimbabwean problem.
Yes.
I'll give you two examples. The first one was the Africa Investment Conference that was here in London. I think it was last year, beginning, or not the previous year. And that was under the auspices of the United Kingdom, and the likes of Professor Chan were there and all the others were there. And what happened there was that Zimbabwe was not invited to that. And when they asked the professor, well, what do you say to that? The professor said, don't be surprised by that. He said, I'm not surprised by Zimbabwe not being invited. He said, but what I am surprised by is the fact that all the other African countries there did not make a big deal out of it.
Yes.
They accepted it.
Okay.
And the professor said that is a good indication of where other countries are and what space they're at, that one of their own members has been singled out, not invited, and no one says nothing at all about it. They're not even bothered about it.
Yeah, that is wonderful. It's a sign of maturing, isn't it? And of being comfortable in their own space enough to do that. I think that's the most wonderful thing I've heard, actually, because I hadn't realized that there hadn't been any show of support for them. So
yes.
that's wonderful.
It's that one that's wonderful. And then we move over to just the end of last year, Joe Biden's Democracy and Economic conference also that he did for all the other African countries, majority, and yes. Zimbabwe was also excluded from that. And once again, yes. the African countries didn't even raise an eyebrow on that. Okay. And so when you bring in such, shall we say, geopolitics into play, you then begin to understand that even the SADC countries, they are there for the taking, dependent upon how you bring your issue to them. I.e., we have started here in London. That was strategic. There was a purpose in starting on that. We are starting on those countries, those nations who on the international arena are the movers and shakers, who can achieve things. G7, G12, G20. They're the ones who are the movers and shakers. So that when you come to countries in SADC, who are completely on their knees to these countries,
yes,
you can have a wonderful conversation with them to say Namibia, South Africa, Mozambique, Malawi, whoever it is, we can engage on this. We can insist on this. Your debt, we can reduce it. But whilst we're doing that, what about Zimbabwe? What about diaspora votes? Can we remove this misnomer? Can we rectify this? You now have a change, a turning of minds, whereby, yes, we are now beginning to grasp that. And that ripples over throughout the whole African continent, so that gone are the days of whereby when someone is talking about Zimbabwe and the world talks about Zimbabwe, the African continent hunkers down and starts throwing insults everywhere to say colonialists, racists, all those kind of things. Gone are those days. They're well past gone. we are now beginning to mature, as you're saying, as African countries, to say, okay, let's look at this logically, properly, and more importantly than that, do we have the capability of putting right a brother African country who's misbehaving? And for that there, SADC has been woefully poor in its reaction. But when we compare what the SADC region has not done to the West African regional body, ECOWAS, ECOWAS within 24 hours put Mali under lockdown. It was an air closure, border closure, everything closure to make them sit down. So ECOWAS in West Africa has done that to Mali, has done that to Guinea, has done that to a number of its own members who were misbehaving and brought them to book.
Oh,
we have yet to do that in South Africa.
Yeah, that's very good to hear. And I must admit, although I'm a little wary of the man, I did find Malema's comment very interesting when he objected to the xenophobic pushback of everybody at Christmas time this year. And I thought, oh, well, then that is interesting, because he said he would rather, I can't quite remember the context, but he said he'd rather be dead than see Zimbabweans thrown back into the country. Something. You may have
it's that, Jill, whereby suddenly in South Africa, Zimbabwe is now domestic politics. It has gravitated to that arena, whereby South Africa has got its elections coming in 2024. You have the likes of Julius Malema, Musti Maiman, and a number of other prominent individuals who are now talking about Zimbabwe in the domestic politics arena, of saying things like, can we freeze all Zimbabwean government assets? Can we remove the Zimbabwean embassy from South Africa? Really things that you would never have thought they would utter 5 years ago. They are now actually bringing and talking about those things, which are showing that they are now quite fed up with about the Zimbabwean problem. And I don't blame them.
You can't blame them, but the problem is that most of the Zimbabweans, I would think geographically, are Ndebele, who are in South Africa.
Yes, they are. Because they started going to South Africa in the late 1970s and the 1980s. So there's been a movement there for a very, very long time. Even when I was growing up as a youngster, we had this picture of one of our own people going to South Africa to work in Kimberley Mine over there. And the minute you spoke about that, we used to call them Imgoli, i.e. coming from the gold mines there. And when you said Imgoli, you immediately got a picture in your mind of a chap wearing a huge brimmed hat on there, a huge trench coat, leather coat, trench coat. He was wearing 2-tone shoes, 3-tone shoes. He was as slick as anything, a kind of Al Capone coming back. And that was the Ngoli picture we had. But in South Africa, they've had to accommodate Thabo Mbeki during his tenure as president, when he was president. He said, in South Africa, we have over 3 million Zimbabweans. So we're going back to Thabo Mbeki's time. And we fast forward to Ramaphosa's time now. So we can easily add in another 500,000 or even 1 million in South Africa. That's a lot for a country to take on board.
Huge.
It's a lot.
Let's go to the practicalities. Now, the practicalities are the voters' roll, whom we have known for years has been almost defunct, dead people on it, repeated names, etc., etc. You included this in your paper, and it looks as though the postponement has been put off for the 2023 election entirely because of all the things that they haven't done. And that would be those 5. Would you agree that's right?
Yes, that's right, Joe. That's right, definitely. All of those postponements and the likes have been done on purpose, whereby really to rectify and put Zek's house in order. they've willfully chosen not to do so. And let's bear this in mind too. These things have been on the table for the last 30 years, at least. Because many observers' reports have been constantly saying, please do this, and they've refused to do those things. So for us, when it comes to the 2023 election, we know definitely it will be disputed. We know that within Zimbabwe. And so we are doing something new with that particular position, whereby we are beginning right now to tabulate the reasons why we should take a cautionary note about the results in 2023. So we are already beginning to galvanize the international arena to say, when 2023 comes through and the election is disputed, please say right now in 2022 what we can do about it. So we're not going to wait until that time. Let's do it right now. Let's come together right now. Let's sit down right now to say, when that day comes,
right,
we're doing X, Y, Z.
Right. Okay. Now, a couple of other things come to mind. There are, of course, going to be a lot of people within the country who would much rather vote electronically. But you have a huge problem, of course, that many people cannot, although everybody in Zimbabwe has to have a mobile phone in order to buy and sell.
Yes.
But most of them, in rural areas particularly, can't charge them because the electricity supply is so much a problem.
It's
do
a
you think,
huge problem.
Yeah, do you think you're going to get that body of locally living Zimbabweans who also want to be part of this?
Yes, we will, Jill, purely because here what we're looking at is we are saying if we are doing this independent vote for the 2023 elections there, it is under our auspices.
Right.
So rather than sticking to that one particular date that the government chooses to say this is voting date for the elections there, there's nothing stopping us starting a month before and saying our voting process has a duration of 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, where they can do it. So that even if they want to cut off electricity strategically, or if they want to hinder the process or to put spanners in the works, we have the whole latitude to say the voting through the diaspora vote lasts 3 months. Anytime in 3 months you can vote,
right,
or even longer, or at any time, or it can be before the elections, or it could be after the elections. So we have those, shall we say, those skills at our disposal.
Right. Well, there's also opportunity perhaps to try and persuade somebody with lots of money to get some solar-powered panels going in rural tribal areas, in growth points, to try and ensure that continuity of supply with lots of little charge buttons. You know, you can envisage it, can't you? Okay, so that's something else we might work on. All right, so now the registrations has been appalling so far. I mean, everybody was asked to come home. You can vote if you come home. They got home and they couldn't register.
Jill, that's atrocious. You know, I was lost for words when I saw what the game plan was that they had, whereby they gave this narrative to say, come home, no problem at all. And when the poor souls began coming home, ZAC closed its doors. The offices were closed. It was done on purpose with the full knowledge that during the Christmas period, that is when they would have the biggest influx of people coming back trying to vote. Those are the shocking things that we're having to deal with. That is why for us and for myself, I've always been saying, let us not treat Zimbabwe as a normal situation. It is an abnormal situation. And if we understand that, we'll then begin to look for solutions that will really address the problem that's in there. So that's one of those examples, which are infuriating. They are very infuriating.
Yeah. And is there, to any extent, a degree of voter fear of being concerned about voting? Because in the past they've been beaten up and they've been, you know, there's been some awful internal examples. Is
Yes.
that a reality? And will this break through, do you think?
There's a lot of voter fear, but also one thing that seems to be even more so is that there's a lot of voter apathy in Zimbabwe. The voter apathy, I can't blame it purely because the poor people have said, what has democracy done for us?
Yeah.
This business of casting a vote, what does it really do for us? It has done nothing for us. The corrupt man down the road continues in his way. There's no law, there's no nothing. So voting is not done. So we have a challenge in Zimbabwe about addressing voter apathy to try and encourage people to say, once more, come up with us. We may achieve something.
Yeah, and I think that hand in glove with that, of course, is an increase in violence there. And also this, something struck me in what I read from you, because I have been bothered for a long time by the way that there was almost a national service put in the border Gezi camps, but there was a tremendous amount of indoctrination that went on through that period. And then in yours, you mentioned 800,000 school leavers who did not register to vote or disappeared off the voters' roll. What is happening there?
There, Jill, what we're looking at is we get the figure of around about 800,000 to 900,000 from the Zimbabwe Social Services Departments and the Zimbabwean Education Department, whereby they're the ones who collect the figures that are there, saying that every year there are so many school leavers who leave school and they are of the legal age to vote. So we have captured that number, 800 to 900,000 every year reach that age of voting. And then we go over to ZEC and we ask ZEC, how many new voters for this year, or 2021, did you register? This time they told us only about 2,000. So 2,000, just 2,000 new, completely new registered voters came in. And yet in 2021, 800,000 became of age to vote. Now, this has been going on year upon year, year upon year. In 2020, ZEC only registered 147,000 new voters out of 900,000. So here we're looking at, I mean, this is election rigging that is in broad daylight. We can see it there. It is there before us. And then to make things even more difficult for those youngsters who really, really, really want to vote, the government says, oh, by the way, we don't have the stationery to issue with proper birth certificates. We don't have the stationery to issue with identification cards. So that individual has now been totally disenfranchised because they don't have what is necessary for them to register to vote with ZEC. They don't have a birth certificate. They don't have an identification card by design of the current government.
Of course.
So these are the things that push us to think outside the box. Absolutely. So that even when we're talking about this, Jill, we don't have any truck at all about answering questions when people say, what will the government do? It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the law of the government of Zimbabwe. All of those arguments we sweep aside because we say we're dealing with individuals who do not understand the principle of democracy and rule of law. So why should we kowtow to them in the full knowledge that they've bent every institution to their favor?
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't do it anymore.
No.
There is another question, and then I think we've probably been talking enough to get everybody switching off. But Chief Ndiweni, the military, that has bothered me for some time. Where do their loyalties lie? Is it as simplistic as the next pay packet, or is it a deep-seated loyalty?
with the military, they are in flux. The military is in flux. It's in flux purely because it really has got the short straw. The pay packet is non-existent. If you are in the military, you will retire with really virtually nothing at all. If you are in the military, you will not receive a proper healthcare service going towards you. So really your terms of employment, if you are in the military, are very dismal indeed. And so they are in flux right now. Hence, us witnessing the mushrooming of robberies being done by the military,
yes,
carrying firearms in military uniform, all those things. So really it's come down to that particular situation of whereby the loyalty is definitely not there. It is not there.
yeah.
There's everything to play for that. If people come along and can convince the military that actually we can offer you a better deal, they will take that.
Yeah.
The aptitude for that is there. So it is not as tough as it used to be, say, in 1983 or 1985, whereby the military really believed in the government of the day, really believed in all those things there. Nowadays, it's no longer there. And to bring it home to us, why I'm confident in saying that, if you watch the military and those generals, high-ranking officers who retire from the military, very, very few of them, when they do retire, will still be alive 6 months after they retire.
I have no.
They've been dropping like flies, and that is an indication that the powers that be are very unsecure.
Yeah.
They are not secure at all about their position when it comes to the military on that. So
Yeah.
I think there's everything to play for on that. And if push comes to shove, I do not really think that the military would stand up to follow the orders of the current government.
No.
If the international arena was applying pressure.
Right. Okay.
Big pressure, they would not really, they would just sit down and choose to say, let's look at the film. Let's see what happens here.
Also, Britain, of course, sent out various members of their army to help us over the independence issue. Perhaps they might do the same again, because it is of that nature, isn't it? It is such a dramatic turnaround that will be happening.
It's a dramatic turnaround that will be happening. And if, for argument's sake, if we say the by-elections which are coming in March, if during that period we have a lot of violence, a lot of disorder, I can easily see the current government of the day saying, well, okay, then we are bringing in a state of emergency into the whole country. There's lawlessness, there's everything there on that. But for us, where I'm coming from, I'm saying, even if there is a state of emergency or lawlessness, I'm saying, let us bring in the white helmets, UN troops, peacekeeping force in there to keep order, to bring order. That is what I suggested the last time when I saw the members of the opposition parties being attacked left, right, and center, and the government was just wringing its hands saying, we don't know what happened. We can't understand it. And I was saying, well, in that case, bring in a peacekeeping force. It is there. It can be done. South Africa would gladly provide a peacekeeping force. We have the American base in Botswana. They would gladly provide a peacekeeping force to bring peace and order so that we may have an election.
Absolutely. Now, just another, I'm going to throw something into the ground for you, just to conclude with. You have mentioned that you would not be interested in a GNU. I can understand what you mean from that as it's presently constructed. But would you, with this first diaspora vote, not consider perhaps an interim 3 years of governance by the most skilled Zimbabweans anywhere. All right, so I'm talking about using the diaspora too. I mean, you get your, we've got so many. You don't know where to start, but you've got some of the best businessmen named by Forbes. You've got doctors. You've got you've got your artists. Look at our Zimbabwean actors, musicians.
Oh my goodness.
They're all over the world. They've all had experience, as you said, of many years of living within democracy. You say to them, give us 2 years of your life and come back and help us to get this country right.
Yes.
Are we then looking at a referendum first that says, would you be happy with this? Or do you see us still going straight to an election?
Really, with the diaspora vote, the diaspora vote is only the first step on the roadmap for Zimbabwe. Okay. So here we're talking about a roadmap for Zimbabwe. Okay. We're leaving the actual election itself on the side if we're just looking at the diaspora vote.
Right.
For us, we've said the diaspora vote is the first step on the roadmap for Zimbabwe. On that roadmap is we will have a conference for Zimbabwe, an international conference for Zimbabwe, whereby we'll go to a third country. It will definitely not be in Zimbabwe, not in SADC, not in Africa. It will be a third country where this conference for Zimbabwe will be held, whereby it is the international arena coming together with all facets of Zimbabweans from Zimbabwe and the international arena.
Wonderful.
And at that conference for Zimbabwe, Jill, the whole aim for the conference for Zimbabwe is to define the terms and conditions for transitional government.
Excellent.
A transitional government that will take office for the lifetime of a parliament, 4 years, 5 years, to try and bring order to where there's been chaos.
Excellent.
To rectify all those things. And a transitional government is that kind of authority that brings professionals into the office.
Absolutely.
Plugs
and everybody knows it has a specified length of time and it is there to do a job. Brilliant. 10 out of 10. Fantastic. No, I think that'd be wonderful. I mean, you take Alex Magaisa, his constitutional knowledge. You take some of our professors at universities. And Dumiso, another one. They're at the top of their tree. Strive Masiyiwe would be wonderful. Put them all together in a box, and wow, that country is going to be hard to beat.
It will be hard to beat, Jill, but the whole and the power, the punch that a transitional government has is that it is working in partnership with the international arena, which means it will take Zimbabwe a lot shorter time to get on its feet, rather than the political route. The political route will take another 10 to 20 years for Zimbabwe to stand on its feet. But with a transitional government, you've given it a steroid injection. It is jumping up and down. It will be there.
Yeah. I'll put my hand up and come and train your broadcasters. Well, on that note, I think we must say goodbye just for the moment. I've no doubt we'll do some more of these as things start to develop. But thank you for your time. And I will get this up on my YouTube channel as soon as I can. Possibly, I think, as 2 separate programs.
That's fine.
So thank you so much. Look after yourself and Nthlanthlayamangwe Felix.
Nthlanthlayamangwe, Jill, thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you. And we will get in touch. We've got work to do.